Hey, welcome to Wise Up on Air. Good to see some folks out on an October in the year 2021. Can you believe this year? I'm Damian Kaspauer. I'm a software product manager here at Audiokinetic, and you are tuned in for an exciting episode. I can't wait to tell you what we have in store, and here's how it's going to go. We're going to do a little news, just some updates around the fringes of what's been going on here at Audiokinetic. I'm going to give you a little community spotlight. We're actually going to focus on an interesting part of the music system you might not know about in Wise. And then we're going to have a special guest with us here on Wise Up on Air, which this is a series where we try to bring in developers who are working with Wise, doing interesting things. We ask them questions about what they're up to. Sometimes they lift the hood on the projects that they've been working on. And today we have a special guest who's going to walk us and talk us through the OST soundtrack app that he made. So stay tuned for that. And with that, I am going to talk a little bit about all the cool games that have come out recently using Wise. By now, you're extremely overwhelmed. The end of the year is coming, but you cannot wait because there are so many cool and exciting titles coming out to play. We love games and we love game audio. Some of the cool things coming out on my radar, the Space Folk City VR game. I know the person in charge of the music and sound of it. It's a expertly crafted space sim in 3D in VR. Really cool looking game. Lone Echo 2. This is a franchise, again, built on VR historically that really accentuates the realism of an experience like that. If you're into running around and shooting things, Back for Blood, the spiritual successor of Left 4 Dead from Turtle Rock Studios, this is a game that defined a genre once upon a time, and they're back to do it again. The Far Cry 6, number 6 in that series, and this one really nails the cultural side of the music. Eduardo Weiseman, the audio director on that, has done a bunch of great videos around how he pulled together the team and really brought out the details in the environmental storytelling around Far Cry 6. So the work that he's done and the team at Ubisoft who worked on it across a bunch of different studios there, actually. Deep gameplay and storytelling. So definitely one to check out there. What else we got? Hot Wheels Unleashed? Who's playing that? Come on. Origami 2. If you played the first Origami, the second one takes things up a notch even more. This is a very artistic game with a bunch of cool music and sound things happening. And then any folks jump into Deathloop. Our friends at Arcane over in France released this game, which really hit the radar hard with that kind of gameplay, and just throwing it way back to Life is Strange True Colors, a game that really accentuates that storytelling and player choice side of things and playing out your dramatic results in real time as part of that story. Hey, in the chat, that Pokemon Unite. I've never gotten into the Pokemans, but I'm glad to hear that someone's addicted to it. Is that a good thing? Yeah, I bet it sounds good. I'd be interested. What does your wife think of the sound? and thanks for tuning into the chat. So again, congrats to all the developers who are releasing games this fall. It's an exciting year. We've been working from home, and I think seeing the results of the labors during these times, well, there's just a wealth of great and interesting games to play. So I hope you're finding some fun out there during these times, and keep it easy as the velocity accelerates towards the end of the year. Another thing I want to talk about is our Audiokinetic blog. Hey, do you write about things that you do with sound and interactivity? The Wwise blog might be something that would feature that writing. And speaking of that, recently we had a great article about teaching Wwise to the blind for some folks at Full Sail. We had a recap of the Interactive Music Symposium. If you tuned in today to hear more about interactive music and dynamic music, the Interactive Music Symposium that we hosted brought together a bunch of different perspectives about interactive music. There were some cool panels. There was a deep dive into the sound of music for Sackboy. Just a ton of great content there, and an overview of it in our blog. And if you tuned in to the last Wwise Up on Air Hands-On, I went into the most recent release of the Wwise Audio Lab, which is our Wwise and Unreal integration sample project that you can download. And it puts your hands and ears on these different techniques and exposes a way for you to audition things like spatial audio features, 3D audio features, the ability to hear things in different bus configurations, output configurations. It's a really comprehensive way to understand what's happening with audio in the Unreal and Wwise context, and just is a lot of fun to be able to finally just A/B test some of these different scenarios for sound. So a great resource there. And again, the Wwise blog is just a rich resource for people looking for a unique and really tailored perspective. And so if you have a unique perspective that you'd like to bring to the Wwise community of interactive sound people, let us know. Drop us a line. Open ears at Audiokinetic anytime. Speaking of resources, I wanted to talk about the Wwise 301 certification and specifically a video that we have up there talking about callbacks for Wwise events. And I'm talking about callbacks here in the context of being able to get information from Wwise in the game engine and then be able to use it in different ways. And so callbacks are a way that you can make more of what's happening at runtime with Wwise and leverage that to do cool tricks in your game. One way that people are using callbacks that Jake Gamelin has outlined in a series of videos he's released this year are for music system callbacks. And this is the idea of being able to get beat, bar, and tempo information from the game as it's running and use that information to do things visually in the game. So syncing the beat to a flashing of a light on the dance floor, or taking the bar and changing up the lighting in the club. There's a great series of videos from Jake. He has them released under the Character Composer name, and I think it's a great way to dig deeper behind the scenes of what Wwise can offer at runtime in conjunction with a game engine. But I'm going to pull out from that a little bit. So we went deep, and now we're going to pull back to the surface, and I'm going to introduce my guest today. And I'm happy to have with us Simon Hanna. Hello, Simon. Welcome to Wise Up on Air. It's good. Good to have you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And again, there's so much potential in the box with Wise when it comes to music. And the music callback side of things is a little bit behind the scenes. But let's talk about what you're doing with Wise and the OST Tabletop app.
Sure. So essentially, what we've done is we've taken a video game soundtrack. So, the way that you can connect tracks as you would in a video game with stings or, tags or anything like that. And we've taken all that and we've moved it to the tabletop. So in essence, the dungeon master or whoever's controlling is acting like the sort of the game engine where they can, basically tell Wise, in this case, what's going on and what's appropriate for the situation.
So it's kind of dungeon master or game master as orchestrator of this virtual underscore for their tabletop experience.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's sort of like what they are anyway. They're the storyteller. And yeah, so this is a really nice, simple tool to just assist them in that, the telling of the story further, to just more immersion.
Awesome. How do you feel about giving me a little demo of it? Maybe even
sure.
No worries. Spinning up a scenario. So we've got the app up here, and yeah.
All right. Cool. All right. So hopefully we can hear that.
Sounds great.
So, fantastic. So you've lost your chicken. Yep. So you've lost your chicken Henry, and you know that he goes to wander around in the mountains, and it's getting quite windy, and you see like a cave opening, and you head in. You're exploring, but suddenly you see on the ground a shiny thing. Perhaps do you want to have a look and see what it is?
Yeah. I want to see what it is.
Yeah, sure. So you bend down and it's a lucky penny. Fantastic. You can spend that for a fruit roll-up perhaps later.
Awesome. I'm keeping this.
And so it sort of starts to get quiet. You head inside into the cave, and it's dark and ominous. And then, but suddenly, you see a chicken, but it doesn't quite look like Henry. Perhaps it's his wife Henrietta. I don't know. But then Henrietta starts growing 1,000 legs and bursting into a eldritch horror. And now you have to fight. And you're fighting, probably. I assume you cast a fantastic spell, perhaps.
Fork, stab, 1.
So, very elaborate spell.
Crystal, 2.
Fantastic. And now you're starting to win. And then you take the final blow, perhaps, chopping off all the legs. Why not? Like this. Yep. Oh, you're a wizard with knives as well. And then Henrietta, she starts to like crumble and bleed and fall to the ground. I think you've won. Except now you've got to explain to Henry what you did to his monster wife. So
yeah, sorry about that, Henry.
But you got the silver dollar, or coin or whatever it was. So, maybe you can buy him something nice.
Yeah, I'll make it up to him somehow, I think.
So you didn't actually get to do much in that. It was more just me telling a story, but that's all right.
Well, hats off, because I felt it, like the gripping emotion and the like swell of what was happening. It was overwhelming me emotionally. I felt right, like I was right there, part of that experience, just enthralled, enraptured with it.
That's good. Fantastic. You're a fantastic role player.
Thanks. I tried. I brought a few props. I was warned, and
Really?
I didn't necessarily want to take the life of poor Henrietta, but I like to think of it more as like exercising her demon. And in fact, maybe from the ashes of that beast rose a Henrietta that was ready to take life by the hair.
You can tell Henry that for sure.
Yeah. No, but I love the so I'm all about this improvisational side of things, and again, you were in control the whole time, making choices in the app about how long you're telling the story. You make the choice. Can we walk through some of those choices again, just in slower?
Yeah, sure, of course.
Yes.
Yeah. I didn't want to.
Yeah, no, it was awesome because I was right there. So what happens when you first start out? Then you pick one of these.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, this is like this is just for this is the alpha set. So eventually there'll be a lot more locations, boss encounters, and things and you can sort of customize your set based on what's going to happen in your story.
Yeah.
So and then once you've got that set up, so for instance, we go to the Mountain King, and so in this particular one, they're all a little bit different because we've been sort of experimenting with best practice and things like that. For this particular one, we've got Atmosphere and Explore, which in the future we're going to kind of join them together, but Atmosphere, so we start to get just some really and
okay, so
every now and then,
and so you got an outside and you got an inside, you got a parameter that you're scrubbing back and forth for.
Yep. So we get more intense.
Got it.
It'll there's some music, some little music stings that'll sort of float in and out, set them up sort of randomly in Wwise.
Great.
To appear.
And we'll look a little bit into that Wwise side of things here in a little bit, but let's keep talking about the properties you have.
Yeah. So, and then underneath the slider, we've got little musical stings. So if I click one, so if something happens in the story, you get a little musical sting. We'll have there'll be little timers on the actual button, so the DM will, and the actual bar will be more accurate once we've got the callbacks.
Exactly.
And so then you can go inside or outside, and so we're still in the sort of sound effects sort of realm, and then the actual Explore is a looping track.
Got it. And so for folks who are familiar with Wwise, you're doing a state change behind the scene between those two things?
Actually, everything's just switch at the moment.
Yeah. Same-ish thing.
Yeah, same. Yeah. And so, Atmosphere Explore, and then, if you can just switch quite easily.
Yep.
Like this, if you wanted to, so if we were in Explore and you wanted to actually, so there's a transition button, you can go and play basically an intro again.
Yeah.
And go, if we went to Hunted in Danger, it goes straight into something a bit more.
That's awesome.
So the slider, I think we're going to have sound effects always in every music break.
Yep.
For this one we didn't.
Yep.
So this desperate escape, if we go back to the hunter, and then the encounter is just like you fight.
Yep.
Basically. That was another steam into it. Yeah. And then we've got neutral, which is just you fight, and so these will loop. That's might not be obvious, but these tracks will loop, and then winning when things are looking good. We've got a couple of sound effects, so that there's more to the app still that we're gonna add in. So we're gonna look at adding in some actual sound effects in this sort of area as well. And then once once anything's done, you've got outro options. So if it's successful, you can just do neutral. If it's nothing too important, the failure. They didn't do good this one.
Yeah.
And so it's we're trying to connect the entire story rather than sort of just fading in this, fading in that.
Yep.
And obviously Wwise was a perfect choice for this because, like I said, it really is like a video game soundtrack.
Well, and something you mentioned briefly was, that during parts of the music that it would loop, right? And I think that was that simple idea that during your campaign, during your storytelling as a game master, that you would take an indeterminate amount of time to tell that story. And sometimes you might go on a tangent, start elaborating, talking whatever, backstory and whatnot, bring in, a little context from the players. And so the system that you've created and put into people's hands allows them to have the freedom to tell the story within their own time, at their own pace, but also gives them that control to accentuate those moments of transition between story elements, as well as punctuating them with stingers or again, I love the way that you allow people to make a choice at the ending. Was it a success, a fail, was it neutral? And because you've thought through that process of tabletop game playing, and I think that's what really impressed me right off the bat, is that it's made for that kind of improvisational style. And of course, as you mentioned, video games just do this inherently, right?
That's what they do.
It's what they do, and it's what Wwise does really well. So, we really wanted to make it as adaptive as possible, and obviously as simple as possible as well. That was the other thing. We really, there's some other great programs out there, but for me, they were just like really involved, and like when you're DMing, you've already got like a billion trillion things you're trying to remember, and so we sort of took, for me, what was like the most important aspects of what a soundtrack should do, and really tried to keep it simple. And we're always sort of juggling that. My developer, he's always like, I'll be like, what if we do this and that? And he's like, this might start getting really complicated or confusing. And he's been fantastic at making sure that it doesn't get out of like too complicated. There's still a few tweaks and things, but overall. Because again, it's that simple presentation that gives people the accessibility to make those choices in the moment, and execute on it. So I'm really interested, like this intersection of music and interactivity, this app, like what's the equation in your life that added up to where we are today? Like.
I mean, I've been gaming, gaming is probably my earliest memories. video gaming. And then a bit later in life, board games. And there was one point when I always loved music, but there was really a moment in my life where I realized what music was actually doing for me. And it was when I was reading books. And I tried so hard to really engage and be interested in books. And then I think it was A Hobbit or something like that. And then I would watch Lord of the Rings and, that soundtrack, just the emotion and things like that. And then I think I went back to books and I was like, there's no music. Like I will never engage as much with this book because it doesn't have this, soundtrack that music can do something that I don't even know if anyone can quite sort of quantify. So at that point I just I really understood that music for me makes things, I can connect emotionally. And so, when, I play a lot of board games with friends and that's around the time that it sort of started to click that I wanted more. I wanted a soundtrack that, could evoke, even after the fact, you could rehear a song and you'll remember sort of the experience. So,
and you're
you're
a composer yourself.
Yeah.
And so did you do some formal training for that? Is it?
I tried. I'm a terrible student. So way back in high school, it was like year 9 and the music teacher was like, nah, you're not, this isn't for you. I was like, okay. But that's fine. I was a terrible student.
Sure.
So I sort of, never sort of finished high school and then went to university. So I had to, do like a bridging course and went to uni. And through my 20s, I wasn't actually writing music.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a band when I was younger that did quite well in Australia. But I'd never really written music. And it wasn't until later in my life, I sort of dabbled a bit around with it, but it wasn't until later that I really started to, take it very seriously. Even though, like, I remember when I was a kid, my cousin asked me once, he was like, what do you want to do when you're older? I would have been like 13 or something. I was like, I don't know, like, music for movies is cool. Like, but, we're in Adelaide, Australia. Like, we don't, I don't know anyone who could help with that, or even if it was like a feasible, thing. So I guess it never really, turned into anything. And then, in my roughly mid-20s, I sort of privately studied enough to be able to get into music school. I did that for like a year. I didn't love it.
Yeah.
And so most of what I've learned has been sort of self-taught. But I do have a very strong emphasis on theory and like I hate the idea that I don't know what's going on, and if I hear a piece of music and they do something that I can't, I don't know what it is, I have to go to the piano and like just work it out.
Yeah.
So it's been like very sort of patchy, like there's not been a very like clear road to where I am now,
but I definitely see the intersection there of, a lifetime of enjoyment of gaming in its different ways, that kind of epiphany moment of, things are just better when they've got an underscore, right?
Yeah.
And then, your continued, process of education, self-education, to skill up to a place where, I really do see the manifestation of those things in this app that you've created. It's a tremendous accomplishment to focus your energy and vision towards something like this, and it's going to be great to get it in people's hands as
absolutely
as DMs and game masters out there, and there's a lot of potential. We'll come back to that potential side of things. I'm kind of interested to dig a little bit deeper under the hood into the Wwise side of things.
Sure.
Before we do that, would you pull up the UI for one of the scenarios again for me? I just wanted to take a quick peek back at this. So we've got this idea of fantasy and boss battle. We've got some different states or switches across the atmosphere and danger and encounters.
Yep.
We've got a parameter we can look at and maybe some of the fun things you're doing with that. You know, some stingers, some one-shots, some transitions. Again, all pretty cool, like bread and butter stuff in the Wwise interactive music system. And I think I'll be real interested to just take a peek at it and see what that looks like.
See what it's doing. No worries.
Cool. So swapped over to your Wwise project, and thanks for inviting us under the hood.
Oh, that's all right. Yeah, gosh, this is going to be potentially embarrassing. We'll see.
That's all right. And if there's folks out there tuned in that have questions, please put them in the chat. We're keeping our eye on it, and we'll bring those and thread them into the discussion when it makes sense. So thanks for tuning in. Good to see you out there. Alfredo Romero, Bowmancer, game composer, Rupee up. Good having y'all out there. So let's go.
It's actually quite simple. I mean, originally I had a player here that it wasn't working.
Okay.
And so I decided to put everything in one Switch container, and so far it's working all right.
I'm a big fan of that strategy.
Yeah, well, yeah. So, and we've only got one play event, which happens at the start. And so the trick to get around that is that each outro actually goes to a silent. It's just looping infinitely on silence. So
exactly.
So that's really, really handy to have.
So you post an event at the beginning of the app that's basically start the music.
And, it starts the player, it's silent, and then it'll basically transition into, whatever the first thing that is playing is, and then that they choose, sorry. And then, from there, the music system doesn't stop. I did, when we first started, I mean, this is like, 2 years in the making. And again, I watched like the Wwise videos and stuff, and they're good, but there's always a million sort of small questions. So again, like just fumbling my way through this when I first started to, because I had to teach myself how to use Wwise as well for this app. So so originally we had multiple play events, and I just had sounds everywhere, and I was like, this isn't working. So we had like one stream of sound of playback, and it's working much better.
It's a simple, elegant, graceful way to negotiate all those transitions. You want the music to continually respond with awareness of itself, right? I think there's a song called Please Don't Stop the Music, right? It's like, just keep it flowing, and if you got to go to silence, that's fine. Just keep it in time so that when it is time to pick up and start music again, we have that thread, like you said, that we can just continue to follow through. So elegant solution, simple, but extremely effective.
No, it's working really well. And so in the Switch container, which is the player. So I got music player and player. That's fine. So the player has all of the different switches basically. So the first the track list is all of the so each of the different banks that you saw. So FSS01 is boss battle.
Got it.
And then you've got the up to 4 categories, which was the atmosphere, explore, danger, encounter. And then moods was like neutral, winning, desperate escape. and then the music switch. So you've got the intros, the loop, outros, and sting interludes. So
Sure.
sometimes the sting will play on top, triggered with a Wise sting.
Yep.
Sometimes I would just, because it was quite tonal, I found that even if we did like a sidechain compression, sometimes the music that was playing underneath would pop through, and if it was in a different key or something, it didn't quite work. So it's literally switching to the sting interlude and then switching back to the loop,
Got it.
either where it was playing or back into like an entrance point.
Yeah.
And so it's literally as simple. Path filter. It's literally as simple as that.
Yeah.
We have one loop per sort of mood. And so you can see the outdoor, indoor. If we go to category 4, so there's the neutral, winning,
Yeah.
escape. And yeah, it's just working really well. Originally I had this old player which was switches within switches.
Yeah.
Within switches.
Sure.
And Wise was getting, well, it's probably my fault, but Wise was getting a bit confused with all the transition rules, and me also probably putting different transition rules in different sort of parts of the hierarchy.
Yeah.
So I actually only did this very recently. And before then it was
That's great.
Like, why won't it work? Like it just messes up, and then I'm trying to go through all the different switches, and literally our last update I just ported everything over to here.
Nice.
Chucked all the transition rules into here.
Yep.
And it works basically perfectly now. I can click around really ridiculously, and Wise will keep up. It'll figure it out. Whereas before you could freak it out and it would die.
I mean, it's a common methodology to just kind of throw everything at an idea and then refine your way backwards towards an elegant kind of simplicity.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
And I love the way that you've abstracted things even at this point, where you have these different scenarios, moods, compositions, right? And so you're already accounting for that in the way that you've abstracted things, and then layering on top of that the simplicity of your transition matrix. It's smooth.
Well, I mean, hopefully that's what we were aiming for. It definitely didn't start out anywhere near as elegant as that, but
right.
Yeah, we got there.
Right. So let's look at a couple of the transitions. If you can unfold, unfold something maybe that when you're negotiating maybe the end, and you're just trying to decide, how do I get out of the loop and into the end piece of music that's going to play? Do you do it on the bar, on the beat? What kind of settings in the transitions matrix do you?
In the transitions,
yeah.
Well, it really depends on the piece of music.
Yeah.
So if and it depends. And so this is the other thing that's been really, really tricky, is that as I've been learning Wise, I've also been trying to write music, and trying to think, will this work? Like, will this, like, trying to do this and that, and so that's been really, really, really tricky as well, is to actually write music that you think it's going to work like this. So basically, sometimes I had things that were like on the beat. I've tried different outros and things like that where it's just it's not the same tempo at all.
Yep.
And so in that case, I'd have a sort of drawn out sort of fade out, and then because it really depends. It really depends on the music and where it's going.
Yep.
As to what I chose for it to do, either on the beat or just because that's the other thing that's been tricky is my developer, he'd click something, and if it was on the beat or waiting for a bar, he'd be like, it's not responding.
Right.
So that's been a really interesting challenge to sort of negotiate through as well. Is that tactile response versus musicality?
Right.
So yeah, so that's another thing that I'm always trying to balance.
Well, and you,
'Cause, yeah, you know,
and you want the musicality, so you're kind of willing to let it do its thing and play out, but you're
mm,
also, what I hear is, managing the maybe player or even tester expectation
mm,
that, oh,
yeah,
I'm in my campaign, I'm doing my scenario, I press this button, it didn't do anything, I'm trying to go to this
yeah,
next section. And in some cases you're going to
yeah,
be chill and you're just going to be like, okay, it's going to happen. Like,
yeah. Well, they, yeah. I mean, it would really just be a case of if they understood that it's, you know, it's looking for a musical moment to do the thing you wanted it to do, it'd probably be all right. But a lot of users will just think that it's laggy or something like
well,
that.
and I would wonder if that's maybe towards that UI design side of things, when you were talking about
It,
the filling up bar, the
mm,
showing the length of the
that
transition.
something's happened.
So
Yeah,
now
yeah. I
we're
mean,
crossing the line from composing to composing interactively to communicating to the player about the system. How do we bring
mm,
that information back to the player and say, okay, you press the button, chill, it's going to be cool, it's going to happen in three,
yeah,
two,
yeah,
one,
yeah.
yeah, right?
Yeah. So I mean, there's especially, you know, if we can get Wise to communicate that it's going to do something, and we
Yeah.
can make that work with the UI, then I can probably be even slightly more generous with, you know, the
Ye-
musicality to because I mean there were some where I think I had outros set at every 8 bars or something like that. And it was just a bit too long, and without any visual feedback, it's yeah. Um, and so yeah, I've set up all the transitions like this.
Got it.
Um, it's a little bit scary because if I have a transition down the bottom somewhere that's any to something, my whole system's done. So,
That is a confusing
so
part of the transition matrix for sure, that
it's
execution order.
mm, but it's all good. I just have to make sure that, you know, that everything's as it should be.
Listen, comment
Um,
from the chat. Your project looks
mm.
amazing. So
Oh,
I
fantastic!
think hand claps all
Visually,
around.
aesthetically,
Yeah.
yeah.
You
Um, yeah, and basically, so for each mood, I have everything that could potentially happen. Originally, I didn't have these any, you know, this to any,
Yeah.
and that was an issue because it might catch a rule somewhere higher that I just didn't want it to do. So now I've got you know, loops. So I've got loop to any. That's like my fail safe. Like,
Yeah.
you know, if it doesn't know what it's going to do, then do that.
E- Exactly.
And then I've got the outros you can see to next bar with, you know, fade out. Again, it really depends on the type of track.
Mm-hmm.
So to the outros, to the sting interludes, so the
Mm-hmm.
stings that are actually transitioning. Yeah, and so they're all either immediate or next bar. The only one that I allow to play through its entirety is the interlude, because basically wires will switch to the interlude switch, and in the event, it literally goes straight back to the loop, so it knows where to go once it's finished.
Perfect.
And so that's where we use the exit queue. Now, if it doesn't go back to the loop, it goes immediately to wherever it's you know, wherever the player's said for it to go.
Right.
Yeah, and so it's just that a million times over.
And on the game side
Yeah.
of things, again, we talked about, you're kicking off the music at the start. You're using switches to manage those
Mhm.
transitions. Did you create an event for all those switches? Are you calling the switches directly? Like, do you
Let's
have?
have a look.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
believe I believe my like we've changed things like very recently. I think my developer he said, we'll keep everything to events so that if you want to change something, the event doesn't change.
I love that.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't know him until I put the call out on I think it was IGDA Melbourne, like a game Facebook group, and I was like, I need a developer, and he's like, I'm keen, and he's a guru.
Nice.
And he's so good.
But there's such wisdom in that, because I think of the event as this currency of communication between the game engine and Wwise, right? And there's so much you can do in an event, right?
Yeah.
So much you can operate on, and it's oftentimes just having those opportunities in a game or in an experience like this. When something happens, what do you want to do, right? Oh, I didn't think that I needed to do that, but I guess I do. Well, I got an event. I can do it, right? We don't have to jump back into code. We don't have to go, get dangerous in a script somewhere. It's just a simple communication.
Yeah. And especially because, neither of us were familiar with Wwise up until this point.
Yeah.
And so it's a really, considering how much we change and test and things like that, it was very wise to just keep everything as events. So
nice.
I've got very simple category switch category. So the first intro is just the loop.
Yep.
And then intro crazy, right?
Yep.
I have a tiny delay on the loop, seems to work fine.
Yep.
So the intros play to their entirety as well. So they're on execute as long as they're going into the loop.
Got it.
And then just duplicating. So category
perfect.
3. These are our global plays, pauses.
Pause and resume. Yeah, exact.
Yeah, loops. It's all just the switches. It was a lot more complicated in the old player, but like I said, I've really simplified it now.
Nice.
So stings.
Adam, good to see you in the chat. Adam says that he totally does this directly in Wwise for the D&D games that they're running. So much fun. Like, I think more people are going to catch on to this as a cool way to underscore their campaigns. They're definitely leading the charge, and what a great. But honestly, we're at the bottom of your list of events. That's it.
That's it. That's it. See, originally we had all these different intros.
Sure.
I simplified that, and it works.
Yeah.
And I actually we had the old player. We were about to do a big update, and I just was not happy with. I was trying all these different things to smooth over transitions and things like that, and Wwise was like, I'd still managed to freak the engine out. And I remember I'd spent all day and I think all night on the session just trying to figure it out. Because each time I approach Wwise, it's like I know so much more.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's something so simple that you could have done that you just didn't think of.
Yes.
And so that night I was like on the cusp of something, and then I would lay in bed and I was literally like doing it in my head, trying to figure out the system. And I woke up in the morning and I basically had it. Like I was like just simple. Yeah, it was so weird. I've never experienced that before, where like I was literally, I just had this clearest picture in my head, and I was setting up switches, and it was bizarre, but
I definitely love that. In my time working with Wwise, it was exactly what you said. We call it progressive disclosure, which is that maybe like most games, like easy to pick up, hard to master, right? And the more you learn, the more you know, the more you uncover, and the more you start to, imagine different ways or different possibilities, and that is something that I have always valued in my time with Wwise, is that that no matter where I start with it, I end with what I want, right? Whatever facility or faculty Wwise allows is enough to pull off that vision.
Yeah.
So I'm glad to hear that that's where you're at.
I mean, you can get really creative with some solutions. I mean, sometimes, you know, I'm always thinking, you know, does Wise have just a simple way to do this? I don't know, probably, but this is how I'm doing it because it seems to work. Like, so like for instance, some of these intros are actually empty. So there's nothing in them. So Wise will go here, and then in the actual loop, oh, what's that? Oh, no, that's the outro. In the actual loop, maybe not this. Yeah, in this loop, there's only re-entries. No, there we go. Intro 4, and so it literally will. It goes into. So rather than, because I know that you can have the container with
sequence,
multiple sequences, or and you can go, if this is the intro 4, you play intro 4 and then go back in.
Right.
And I was doing that, and I was like, I could just make Wise skip, go into here, skip, and it literally goes straight into the what do you call them? The custom cue that I've outlined, and it works really well. And I really started to experiment with the custom cues because it was a thing that I didn't know a lot about, and they've worked really, really well.
Well, and from my perspective, there's no wrong way that results in what you're going for. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like, I mean, there's probably a smarter way.
Well, okay, but I'm not going to value judge any choices that result in success, right? Because honestly, you can't know everything, and if it's working,
especially when no one's there to sort of guide you. I mean, as like I said, as good as great as the online materials are, there's always very specific things that you. I did because I did. I mean, some of these have multiple. I have played around with the container, the
sequence container,
the sequence container a bit, and I just I wanted to just keep it just a little bit more simple, and the custom cues have worked very reliably. I really like them, and like the re-entry ones that I use. I'll basically say, if you're going from here to here, pick one of these re-entries, and so it'll actually change if someone goes back and forth rather than hearing the same entry each time.
Perfect.
And it works really well. It's Wise, even for those really things that you think are sort of more simple, but Wise just does them really elegantly, and they make them simple. Whereas the reality is, if you wanted to do this kind of stuff in code, it's a lot more.
It's a lot more brain work, right? And I guess I like that separation of what you have control over in what your core competencies are, right? Like the music composition, the interactive music, setting up the systems, the behaviors. Like this all falls firmly on your shoulders and within Wise and your DAW, right? And then you can kind of draw that line for the person you're working with setting up the app side of things, and it kind of makes a really clear division of labor. Like you don't have to communicate, hey, when this happens, I need a fade out of 5 seconds, and if it's blue, then it's 10 seconds, and so it keeps it really clear what the responsibilities are. And
absolutely. I mean, I've developed an app before, so I haven't had any other experience, but I could definitely imagine, what it might be like, and it is like you said, it's very, very. There's a very clear division of, of who's in charge of what, and I've tried not to. Well, we've both tried not to rely on. We're in Unity on the other side.
Got it.
I'm trying not to rely on Unity to do much in terms of the audio system, and so we're really trying to get Wwise to do it all as much as we can.
Absolutely.
And so far, it's working really well. In fact, I don't think there's anything, because there was a point where I was like, I can't remember what it was for, but it was like, could Unity do just this bit or this bit, and it can get really out of hand. In our case, me working off hours on an app, as opposed to like a full-time situation. And so keeping it all in Wwise, it's been really good for control, and I can test this sort of scenarios, set up the Soundcaster to mimic the app, and without any sort of but Unity's going to do this, so I don't know what that's going to do. It works really well.
Yeah, that simulation audition side where you can basically simulate your entire scenario with a Soundcaster session, basically replicating the buttons that you have in the UI. It seems like a dream. Nice. Nice.
Yeah, no, it's really good, and just the once we had this more simple system, it started to become a lot more fun as opposed to just like
totally,
why is it doing this, or and now that it's all set up, I can sort of focus more on the music and the sound effects and things like that.
Yeah, so I'm wondering, so you've got 4 scenarios right now, and you've just got a templatized system that allows you to expand that. The system now, you can compose for the system, so that's... And what I'm hearing is that you feel like you're at a place where you can focus on more music or expand in the music in some way. What are the next step? What are your next plans?
So eventually, the app will be, it'll be like on the main page, we're going to have like a collection or a storefront, and basically just going to have start pushing out like premium packs that are going to have there's I reuse a bit of content in the what's in there at the moment for the demo. I'm going to really make sure that we've got outros and stings and things that are sort of just for that layer, just for that category, and because a lot of the writing and things we had to do was really just a scramble to get this moving. So eventually it'll be like the Dungeon Master's got a battle with a dragon with metal skin in a cave or something, and they'll be able to find that pack, and they'll add it to to their scenario, and eventually they'll have a big list of locations, boss encounters. Another one that another sort of heading that we do is themes and story beats. Or I think we're calling it, I can't remember what we're calling it now, something more simple. And that'll sort of cover the narrative. I think it's narrative moments in a game. So if you find a character that's important for the story in a cave or a market or something, it doesn't really matter where she is. It's more about the story that she's gonna tell, and so we've got a dedicated section for those sorts of moments where location isn't as important. So that's another thing that I think is really cool.
And what I'm hearing is you'll be able to mix and match these kind of elements, right? So you'll say, I got my fantasy theme, and I got my dragon and spider and chicken, and I'm gonna that's my loadout for this game, and now I've got my my moods at my fingertips, and I've got my soundboard for sound effects on my other fingertips, and I've got this customized sound world that I can invoke at any moment throughout the game.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, basically, and I mean, we're starting with fantasy. I mean, I have all these great big ideas. It just takes a lot of time.
Of course, yeah.
We'd like to, do more horror, and then eventually, it's like sci-fi, cyberpunk, and things like that. And so, it could open up, players to mixing and matching genres and things like that. So, a bit of sprinkling a bit of horror into. So that's sort of where we see that eventually would be multiple genres.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just lots of scenarios. That's another thing that was a bit tricky with sort of what we had so far was that I had to be very general with the packs that are there so far, whereas I really want to be a lot more specific and be able to, add in the sound effects and things like that, and the stings and the music that are very specific to, just this thing. Because just when it was a bit broad, it didn't. There was too many but what happens if they wanted to do this or that or this, and it gets a bit overwhelming and into the realm of potential very complex, which is what we don't want.
Yeah.
So that's the when the full version is out. That's sort of what we envision is
great.
Yeah, lots of content and genres, and
that's great.
And just being able to customize exactly what's happening in a campaign.
Excellent. And this is available right now in the Android App Store. You can just jump in and download it. It's what do people search for if they're looking for it?
If you search OST Tabletop Music Companion, it should come
easy.
Or the website. Our website will have which is tabletopmusicapp.com.
Great, and we'll have both those links in the description for this video. The Apple version, the iOS version, a little stickier. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so you need to get test flight. It should, if I think.
And if they're interested in that, they should drop you a line via the website. I know you have a contact page there. So if you're interested in this alpha version of the iOS app, drop you a line. You're looking for folks to give it a try?
Yeah, definitely. I think if you find it on the iOS store, it'll prompt you for test flight.
Cool.
To download test flight. So it shouldn't be too tricky, but there is an extra step.
Sure.
To get it going.
Yeah. In this alpha phase, what kind of feedback are you looking for from folks?
Really, just everything basically. We've had an amazing response.
Nice.
Which has been awesome, and we've had a few could it do this or that, but I was actually expecting a lot more sort of feedback in terms of could it do this or that, but people have been very, very positive, which has been, it's good. And we spent a lot of time sort of pre-alpha doing the layout. We went through a million different versions of what the app could look like, and my developer we just spent a lot of time in that phase to just make sure that it was really simple. And I think the only thing that people have been a bit confused about was the slider, because I kept changing ever so slightly changing what it does from pack to pack, but we're sort of settled on what we wanted to do now.
Nice.
Any feedback is awesome. It's been,
and it sounds like you've used what you've been given to drive back into evolving features like the slider and whatnot. And I tell you, it can be super gratifying when people reach out and share their experience when they use your when they use something you've made, right? Or I can't wait for to see a live stream where someone is using it, to underscore their live campaign. Like this, it just feels like it has
I've had
huge potentials, right?
I've had quite a few people ask if they can, use it for their live stream campaign, and which is cool. Haven't actually seen one yet. I mean, there might be some out there, but I've had a lot of people ask if they could do it. So
yeah,
that'd be cool to check out.
Then what about collaboration? Like at some point the app gets to a point where you've released. Will you be looking for contributors? Were you looking for people to add packs and bring soundboards to the app? Do you have a vision for that future?
Definitely. The idea is that it'll grow to a point where I can't handle. I can honestly, between Wwise and all the music and stuff, I can barely handle it now. I'm already sort of putting the feelers out. The downside is that for me at the moment is that this has been a just completely out of pocket endeavor.
Of course.
So it's I would love to have someone else take over the Wwise, and really fine tune every aspect and then have more composers on board. Because eventually, the idea is we want it to really, really grow.
Yeah.
And to be able to offer, any scenario you can possibly think of, within reason.
Right. Well, it seems like with the modularity and the abstraction that you've built into the way that you've designed the system in Wwise, it's not too far of a stretch to imagine another composer stepping into that system, replacing content or adding content that they've created, and then, that ability to monetize a composer's or sound designer's content within that ecosystem within your app. I really think there's potential for folks and potential for your future in the app. So it's cool to see you building that infrastructure.
Like I said, it is very modular. Like it's very easy to add another pack. It's just a matter of having the content. It is. It's definitely something that I'm sort of looking at more seriously now, is getting more, because I think that's what people are starting to learn about the app, and now they want more. That's what they say. That's the biggest feedback I get is give us more.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much today, Simon, for sharing everything around this app. I think it's a great tool to kind of weave that thread in people's gaming experience, and like you said, kind of tie it to an emotional piece that's more than just pushing play on a playlist. It's a good mood setter, but it's not it doesn't bring the dynamism, man. And
sometimes we have back in the day we'd have the playlist going, and eventually have to just go off into something. We'd eventually have pop music start playing. Like one time, I remember I had my victory. This actually wasn't D&D. It was a tabletop game called Twilight Imperium, and I was on my victory, and I was like, I pulled up this track that I know is awesome for YouTube, and I was like, here we go, and did my move, and there was an ad playing.
Oh,
so I was like, ruined.
Yeah.
So hopefully this offers a more elegant and complete solution to those epic moments.
That sounds like a tagline right there. Cool.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
This is really, really fun. Sorry, I just realized I wasn't looking at the camera the whole time, so I was looking at you over here. Hello.
It's okay. I think there's a lot of grace in this screen-based lifestyle that we've been living, so no worries there. And again, thanks for joining us here on Wwise Up on Air. Awesome. It's been fun.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. If you enjoyed this, get subscribed, tune in next time. We do these pretty regularly and have some cool things lined up. Looking forward to the next one, and thanks again. Simon, take care.
All right, thank you.